Whoa. Okay. There we go. Okay. And we're live. Yikes. Okay. There we go. Yes, yes, and yes. We go to this. Sorry about that, everybody. It's always like that. Should have been ready to roll right away. We had a quick change we had to make. And look at this. Okay, and we're good to go. Okay, yes, here we are. Good afternoon. Sorry, everybody. My goodness. A little late there, Harry. 105, running around. But now we're good. Yes. All right, I believe Gian. Audio is good, says Gian. We are ready to roll. Yes. Let me just check our X connection. Don't forget this afternoon, 4:30, our new time, new program. Thank you very much. Let me just double check. I think we're going to be just fine. And I think we are. Yes. Pin. Okay, there we go. All right, we're going to begin. Yes, sorry about that, everyone. It's my fault, not Gian. He was ready to roll, but it is me. It is the chosen one. All right, we're going to go. Thank you. Yes. Folks, good afternoon. This is Truth Over Bias. Good afternoon, one and all. Again, this is part one of John DePetro Live. Now, we're also live this afternoon at 4:30, and I'm very excited about that. We're expanding, especially the afternoon. It's a little bit of a different feel, different guests that we're going to be having on. And so right now, we are live on Facebook, true, and we're also live on AM 1380 and 99.9 FM. You can listen online at our website. There's Jane Rice. Jane, by the way, I missed you at the funeral. I was there for Debbie's dad. There's Micah Hearn, the big guy stepping in. Now, and then obviously, our Facebook family, our growing YouTube family, which I'm very excited about, as a matter of fact. I love the fact that everybody on YouTube really likes what's happening and what we're doing. And if you're on YouTube, remember, who said super chats? I did. And also, stars on Facebook, but make sure you follow the page. And I want to touch on a little bit. I also, there's a lot to get to on this. It's a very hot Wednesday. Very, very tragic, as a matter of fact, as you had some drownings last night with, I don't know exactly what happened. This happens sometimes. I mean, it's so hot, and maybe some people that are not exactly familiar with sometimes, the thing about if people go to the beach, you have to walk out to the water. The problem with some of these lakes, you could be over your head, very, very quickly. So I don't know that, but I mean, it is unusual that last night, Lincoln Woods, there was a drowning, and then later in Smithfield. So I had one of my children flew in, had some very exciting news. So I said early, and actually last night turned out to be a busy night because there was a shooting in Pawtucket as well. So, but I do plan, we'll be out tonight. Again, it's hot. It's very warm, and then it breaks down and cools down. But I want to obviously touch on, but what I want to mention, everybody, good afternoon. Yes, hello to old friends. I'll have him on sometime. So, but what I do want to mention is this portion of our program is brought to you by PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Folks, remember, first of all, our condolences go out. Debbie, who's so fantastic at PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. Her dad passed away I want to thank Jane Rice, who alerted me to that. You know, I used to, sometimes that's the only reason I really even check the Providence Journal anymore, is because there's nothing to read other than I will check the obits, just to, whether it's someone I know or a family of someone I know. But so our condolences once again go out to Debbie at PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center, 3688 Quaker Lane in North Kingstown. And remember, right now with this hot weather, and then the next few days it's going to cool down, but they have annuals, perennials, trees and shrubs, hanging pots, 10-inch, 12-inch moss baskets, hanging impatiens, pansy marigold bags, large selection of beautiful patio pots, vegetable plants and herbs. They have it all. Tropical mandevillas, hibiscus plants, green lumen mulch are available. They're a full-scale nursery. Everything you need to make your property a showstopper. Stop it and see them. Look for them on Facebook. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. So check out DePetro.com. We're going to have more updates there. Log on, no eyes, DEPETRO.com. Later this afternoon at 4:30 on X, Facebook, and YouTube. Jennifer Coffeder, former FBI, she's going to join me talking about several things, but primarily the Karen Reed case. So, but folks, check out DePetro.com. Brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge. They're waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. Now, I recognize some people are saying, well, the story's over. I'm not convinced of that. It was last Wednesday, 1 week ago, was when, and boy, have we, thank you, there we go. Thank you very much, Cubic. The painter steps in. I love that. It was a week ago that they stepped forward. And I don't know if there's any rational person who is impressed by these jurors so far that have come out. Now, I've mentioned there is a member of the jury. I'm going to speak to them first tomorrow off air. Thank you. There's Colleen Henry. I love all the towels come in. There's Ron Marshall. I'll be honest. So we know a mutual person. I know exactly who it is. They have been away. I want to talk to them first. So they've been out of town. We're going to talk tomorrow afternoon. I want to first speak to them. I'll be candid with everyone. I'm very, the mutual person that we both know, I'm very fond of. I don't want to put anyone in harm's way. I'd like to try to get their take without putting them in harm's way. It is definitely, the Karen Reed defense has certainly set a narrative. And I don't know about you, but the jurors so far that have spoken, I thought, and we'll talk about this more this afternoon with Jen, but I find it more troubling than anything. I don't find, thank you, Lisa Douglas. I find that they're not opening my eyes. They're not saying anything that then I say, oh, okay, like that makes sense. They're actually not. If anything, after they speak, it seems to lead to more questions. And listen, and I want to be very clear. That's, if we talk about, let's talk about, thank you, Jude Drops. Let's talk about when you're watching, someone goes on television and they start talking about the jury and people are saying, so then we criticize and people are saying, well, that's jury intimidation. Well, first of all, the trial is over. The trial's over. So that's really not juror intimidation. That's number one. Number two, I am unfamiliar if there's anyone in Rhode Island or Massachusetts, I'll speak on Rhode Island, that has been faced any charges of after a verdict and then someone was charged for saying something, or I'm not saying it's never happened. I'm just not familiar with any case like that. So there are ramifications for free speech. Look at what's going on in Texas with Joe Rogan with that. I mean, the Instagram videos of that Liver King, that guy is pretty creepy. When someone is coming to your town and they're demanding to fight you, and they're making threats like that, that's something that you got to take serious. As someone that, those of you that follow the program, I mean, I deal with threats a lot. I don't talk about them. Police encourage, me not to, and I don't. And I, by the way, this is nothing new. This has been going on like forever. It really ramped up. Like there's waves of it, 2020. But I'm saying when you're out there, there's certain kind of like terrorism in a way, like level threats. And what I'm trying to say is like Joe Rogan, he certainly seems like he could handle himself, but this guy supposedly traveled to Austin that he wanted to see him or fight him or something. And so I don't blame Joe Rogan for doing that. But let me just, I don't want to get lost here or get thrown off. What I'm saying is, so these jurors are making appearances, and there's a huge difference between if someone shows up at their door and they say, I want to talk to you, or sends a very threatening message. There's a big difference between that and someone just criticizing what they're hearing. So I think it falls hollow. I also want to mention, I mean, I know we still have a lot of Karen Read supporters that tune in. If you are a supporter of Karen Read and you think that there is someone who is legitimately threatening a juror, and I mean a legitimate threat, not just criticizing, like if they change their story or they make up witnesses, or someone says, wow, that person on television, it sure seems like they had an earpiece and someone was talking to them in their earpiece when they were answering questions. And that's why they just keep repeating the same thing over and over, because that's what the person was repeating to them. So when you see an interview, right, like a lot of times if you're watching television and you see the news person, and sometimes they're just repeating it because that's what's coming into their earpiece. When I'll do court TV, they'll say, stand by, John, we're coming to you. Quick answer here. I mean, they're telling you all different types of things. There are people, I hadn't thought of that, but there are people alleging that there's someone talking to some of these individuals in that way, talking into the rear, because it does seem odd and it's not the first time this ever happened. I mean, like every debate, right? Remember with President Bush did a debate and there was like a lump on his back and people like, what is that? And, they're trying to say that he's got something in his ear that he's listening to. They were even saying it about Kamala Harris, that she had earrings that actually acted as a Bluetooth and her people could talk to him. I hadn't thought of that. I don't know enough about it. I know some people are making allegations that there was someone on television and someone was talking to them through the rear and telling them, just say, we didn't see the evidence. Well, we didn't see the evidence. And they never proved she hit him. And they never proved she hit him. And there were a lot of holes in the investigation. And frankly, there were a lot of holes in the investigation. I mean, if you ever seen the movie Broadcast News, they demonstrate, it starts here and it comes out there. I hadn't thought of that. I don't, just because someone has an earpiece, especially if they're remote, could just be how they're communicating. Possible. It's very rare that you just use, because of feedback, that you use the volume of your computer. But I want to touch on something that's going on right now, believe it or not. It's kind of non-Karen Read related, but in a way it should be brought to light. But I want to stay on schedule. And we're talking about what's going on the West Coast with ICE. And I know some ICE agents. They've been, back in when the president took office, for those of you that were following, we were actually pretty active with some of their raids and following them and so forth. And there's going to be more of that as they continue to try to get some people out of the Northeast, seemingly as a hub for a lot of the activity. But what's going on in California, I think it also resonates, and where I really break off with the Karen Reed crowd. But folks, this portion of the program brought to you by Propane Plus Heating and Cooling. Thank you, Artworks. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm hearing that from a lot of people. Folks, call Propane Plus today for all your propane needs. 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252-3359. Propane Plus, and always online at propaneplus.com. Now, I did receive an email from, Sherry. Sherry's saying, do you know there's still spots available for summer camp at Kids Club on the Pike? The answer is yes. As far as I know, there are still some spots available. You can contact Kristen. Maybe it's for a week, maybe it's for a month, maybe it's for the whole summer. Kids Club on the Pike, 401-443-5336. They run a great summer camp for children. Maybe it's for your child. Maybe it's for your grandchild. Maybe it's for a week. Maybe it's for a month. Maybe it's for the whole summer. Kids Club on the Pike, right off of 295, 401-443-5336. It's Kids Club on the Pike. So I do want to touch on, so a week ago today was the tragic, ridiculous verdict regarding the Karen Reed trial, where she was found guilty of OUI. Let's not bury the lead, as the crowd cheered out front. Mothers Against Drunk Driving have never heard such cheers and applause for someone convicted of, guilty of OUI, operating under the influence. But when I talk about what's going on in California with ICE, where the FBI is investigating, the California officials, the report is they're actually encouraging gangs to hold their ground and basically go against ICE. Folks, this dangerous rhetoric, ICE, they are members of law enforcement. They have a job to do, men and women. They are an agency of law enforcement. You have Homeland Security. You have FBI. You actually even have IRS agents. And you also have ICE agents. And I know the director of ICE, Tom Holman. I know him very well. We're going to have him on the program. It may have to be on the 4:30 program, but we're going to have him on. I've interviewed him a bunch of times. He's a great guy. He's perfect for the job. But it brings me this anti-police attitude. That is something, to me, it was never fully captured or covered. Listen, the Boston media fell short so many different ways with the Karen Reed thing, right? Various television people taking selfies with some of the people, wearing their pink, so despicable. But the stories that never really got reported were the anti-police attitudes that I saw up front. And I mean, I had the front row seat, and I could hear them outside the courthouse. You know, they're all dressed in pink, and you have the Massachusetts State Police, and they have to direct traffic, and they have to create crowds. And it just, I'll admit, it makes me uncomfortable. I get that someone could argue they have the First Amendment right to say that. I'm just, when I think back, because people are asking me, what was it like? And, you know, what was the best? I think the worst part was being around so many of the Free Karen Reed people that were constantly like, you pigs, and yelling at the police, you cops are all dirty. You dirty, corrupt pigs. Like, I couldn't stand it. And these are people, number one, like, why aren't you working? And it's a mob mentality. You cops are all dirty. You pigs. Shut up, pig. Like, I can't stand that attitude, admittedly. Now, someone could say, well, you just say that because you work with police. Not really, right? Like, I think a lot of people feel that way. Anyone that watched that, the police would come up to me, and what would they say? You have the best coverage. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Thank you. You're our favorite. Now, I understand I come under criticism for that, and it is true. I do work with, I mean, those of you, we have a lot of new people, but many of the road patrol people, yeah, when I'm on a scene, I was in North Kingstown the other day, the police called me by, greet me by name. One of them said, "Hey, John, you missed all the action. You're a little late getting here. I got there as soon as I could." We're going to be riding with Cranston Police again. I talked to, there's another police department. If anything, right now, police departments, after seeing my coverage, are reaching out and saying, "We'd be honored if you'd come ride with us." But I just question, look, I have a problem with what we're seeing going on, of once again, how men and women law enforcement under attack. Number one, maybe it's the ICE agents on the West Coast. What kind of public official? They're encouraging gangs to attack the ICE agents and hold their ground, hold their territory. That you're encouraging domestic terrorism. Being around the Karen Reed people, they were so vile to the police. There are some people that think that when you have 50 people, that's a good time, right? That's when it's a good time to say, "Be quiet, you pigs. All you cops are corrupt." Like they're just so vile. I can't stand that. As I've said, folks, I mean, if people want to mock, I'm not arguing, "Oh, apparently you haven't read the Constitution." I'm not saying that. In the Constitution, it says I can burn the flag. I get that. I still am troubled by that. I'm troubled by that. I'm troubled when there's a mob. And those Karen Reed supporters, they're anti-police, they're anti-government, they're anti-law and order, they use foul language. As I've also talked about, I'm uncomfortable with the R word that they throw around. I mean, I know it was in certain movies. I know, but they're just, some people are still so unaware how offensive that is. You have adults that have, certain disabilities. You have young people that are autistic. You have adults. We helped try to find Linda, who is a nonverbal autistic adult. I have a problem with a movement that prides itself on using the insensitive R word. Again, I'm not arguing freedom of speech. That's not what that is to me. But it's just, they're so offensive. They are the type that would take sides against ICE. They certainly take sides against the police. And it all starts to blend together. When it all blends together, then that, to me, that's when everything really starts to break down. I think policing, now, again, I don't hide. There's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy working with police. They certainly enjoy my support. Those of you that watch Road Patrol, I mean, all the police I encounter, they like the coverage. They like the way I interact with them. That's nothing to be ashamed of. To me, that's not a negative. But when I think back of the whole experience, I think that was probably the worst part, because I could just walk past them and go into the courtroom. But the police had to stand there. And the police had to stand there for hours as these people in pink, like, "That's right, you pig. Keep moving, you dirty cop." Oh, God. They're just absolutely unredeemable. And on top of that, as a lot of people saw, and it made news, that Karen Reed encouraged her supporters to do a dance. Well, I'll say this. She hasn't condemned it. A Karen Reed supporter did a dance in front of the house at 34 Meadow where the niece and nephew live. And the woman, who still, there's been no apology. Karen hasn't issued a statement saying, "Hey, listen, that is beyond the pale, is inappropriate, it's insensitive, it is pathetic." But nothing. No statement of the O'Keefes should be off limits. A part of it is the people who, one of the things that they like is they like that he was a police officer. Because, and I've talked about this, there's some members of the media, as I've said, they didn't see John O'Keefe as a son. They didn't see John O'Keefe as a legal guardian to the niece and nephew. They didn't see John O'Keefe as a brother. They only saw him as a police officer. And there are certain people, and they're out there. They are. You can't, I'm not saying it's pleasant, but we can't pretend that they're not out there, because there are some people, and they hate the police. And a lot of the progressives hate the police. A lot of the Karen Reed movement, it's an odd group. It's a lot of progressives. They hate the police. You know, they're part of like no good. What's the thing they used to chant when I cover the protest? No good cops in a corrupt system, or something like that. All cops are bad. ACAB. You really started to see that when I was on Court TV with that woman who I think is Canadian NPR or something. She, you could just tell the detest they have, you know, and all those cops on the stand, like mocking it, and the way they salute the flag, you know, good. Like good. She got away with it. All you cop. Like I find it disturbing. I find it vile. I do. They're filled with anti-government, certainly anti-police. They're also like anti-family. It means nothing to them about the niece and nephew. It means nothing to them that the McCabe's are a traditional American family. Mother, father, right? 4 children. They don't like that. Like it's a way to strike back at that. They don't like the Alberts, you know. He's a father. He's married. He's got those kids, and he's a cop. Like they hate it. It sounds twisted because it is twisted. But these people, and now they're trying to loop in, you know, one person. As I've said, I don't know, the Sandra Birchmore case. That sure seems like that the police officer that's being held without bail. It sure sounds like they got the right person there. But they try to loop it in, you know. They're almost trying to loop it in that somehow that's also connected, because all those cops are lie. Like there's nothing redeeming about these individuals. And I get messages. I get people like, you know, you shouldn't talk so poorly about them and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, like someone has to. The Boston media won't, right? The Boston Globe. How many stories have they done? The Boston Globe or any local channel. How many stories have they done on the role that alcohol can play in domestic violence? 0. When Hank Brennan said she was drunk, she was drunk. You don't see that. They won't repeat that. They won't repeat that about Karen Reed, who clearly has some, well, don't take my word for it. Day of, after this happened, according to testimony, she had to be sectioned at the hospital, and her parents wanted certain medication taken away from her. It speaks volumes. Those are not my words. It was testimony from the parents, as a matter of fact. Folks, this portion of the program brought to you by Arch Design Builders. Call them today, 401-207-4124. Maybe it's a new kitchen. Maybe it's a new bathroom. Maybe you'd like to redo your basement or your deck or a special project. Arch Design Builders. Call them today and you get to deal with my friends, Ed and Roxanne. If you're listening or watching right now, Arch Design Builders, 401 207 4124. 401 207 4124. Arch Design Builders. New kitchen, new bathroom, new basement, new deck. They're waiting for you. But you got to call to make the phone call to set up the free consultation. Free meeting. Let's dream. It's a dream meeting. Family owned and operated, 5-star. This is who you want in your home. ARCH, Arch Design Builders, 401 218 9707. I want to also touch on, and again, good afternoon. I recognize there's some people, right now. He's still talking about it. I don't think people understand why we're still talking about it, as they may say, why it's an important story. I get that. But I'll tell you why. And this morning I had an incident. Just adjust that just a little bit. Okay. Better. Good. We're I'll handle that one. We're what are you talking about? We are talking about what really happened, not the fantasy land. Not the fantasy land. No, I'll tell you why. For instance, there is, I go back to me, a good example. There are certain examples when things happen, and I haven't heard it articulated enough. Certainly not from, there's so many media that were just on her side. But what I don't think people recognize is we can't have facts voted on. And a good example, I've encountered some of these hoaxes before, because that's what was pulled. Karen Reed orchestrated a hoax. And people want us to believe the hoax. They want us to believe something that didn't happen and isn't true. The truth is really what's at stake here. And look at the mobs. Like you have to believe their fake narrative. And it is a battle of people like myself and others that refuse. As I've said, I don't care if you have 100,000 people. 2 + 2 will never be 3, and the earth will never be flat. But we are demanding, and we all believe so, and you better get in line, and you better get on the bandwagon. The earth will never be flat. I use Sandy Hook as a good example because there were people I know that I couldn't. And by the way, folks, I want to be very clear. There are some people that I just block or I unfriend, right? Or I don't follow anymore. And I'll freely admit, it says more about me. It says more about me. Maybe there are people. Maybe it's a character flaw. Admittedly, I couldn't be in the same room with anyone that thought O.J. Simpson was not guilty. I couldn't be in the same room. What do I mean by that? I was living in New York. I was at a party, and there was some people there. It wasn't a great party. It wasn't a blowout, but something I had said I'd go to. And there were like a couple of people, 2 young couples, and talking like, no, justice was done. I don't think he was involved with that. And I'm not going to get into it. I couldn't be around anyone that thought that way. Now, I am consistent. Sandy Hook. I have been in instances where there's people that say, yeah, there's something to that. I don't think that happened. Right? That was the whole Alex Jones thing. It was a hoax. Those were fake, empty white coffins. Those kids were not killed. It was all a hoax orchestrated to try to, take away Second Amendment rights. I could not, and to this day, I can't be around anyone that believes that. I want to be very clear. It doesn't make me better than them. I don't hate them or loathe them. I have the right to decide who I choose to spend time with, be around, be friends with, and people that I don't. It's not in me. It's not in me. I couldn't, and to this day, I can't be friendly with anyone. I can't, that actually believes that Sandy Hook was a hoax, that Alex Jones and InfoWars created, and then there was a massive reckoning with that. And 1 week out, I have also come to the realization I cannot be friendly with anyone that believes the conspiracy. I can't. I cannot do it. Maybe other people can. Thank God. I don't have any friends that believe it. God, I don't have any family members that believe it. None of my children believe it. Like, I cannot. Maybe other people could. I went to a party last spring, and two people that I went to college with, they believed it. And the husbands were like, I don't know what to believe. She's following it. Like that type of thing. I couldn't. I'm not taking a poll. But anyone that, like, I'm very comfortable. I can't. It's now become the third. I could not be in the same room with. I can't be friendly with someone that believed OJ, that somehow was justice. It was a good thing he got away with killing two people, with a knife for no reason. Yeah, there really wasn't a lot of Ron Goldman's blood in the Bronco. Oh, okay. That's reassuring. I'm just trying to figure out why there was any Ron Goldman blood in the Bronco. Sandy Hook, there is someone that I was friendly with, but her defense, she'd say, well, Alex Jones, well, he wasn't the only one. That's like a soft defense. He made it up. He had to go to court and apologize to those parents. Cost him InfoWars. And Joe Rogan still has him on. I don't think he should. He made it. Alex Jones was making huge money. They brought in, I'm telling you, it's on HBO Max, The Truth versus Alex Jones. They were doing about $40,000 a day, and they sell supplements with an online store. Then they posted a Sandy Hook story. That day, they didn't do $40,000 in sales of supplements. They did $240,000 in supplements. It's all about money. During Sandy Hook, as he was pushing, was a hoax, that they were actors. And then he did the whole thing, Anderson Cooper and the green screen. It was all made up. And they just stayed on it. For years, they stayed on it. In one day, he made close to, InfoWars did 900,000, all over a hoax, that none of those kids were killed, and that it was all actors. There was no one buried. That, to me, that goes beyond the pale. That's not even an oops. That's not even a maybe I shouldn't have said that. That is a calculated effort to engage in fraud beyond hurtful. And by the way, there were no shortage of individuals that were jumping on board. There's some nut lady in Connecticut saying, you want to prove it to me, as if she's like a nobody. She reminds me of like that Rita in Canton. She would say this, you want to prove to me, you have to dig up those kids and show me the inside. Can you imagine, like, where do you get off? You have to prove to me. You have to prove to me that happened. They won in court. So my point is that what we have, and I have people pushing, just go along with it. Folks, this, as I've said, it would have been a lot easier if you can't. Why I do my program, I put out what I know, and I try to, deliver it, ideally in an entertaining manner, because that, to me, like, if people are bored, I'm not just reading a manuscript. It's got to be somewhat lively, entertaining, when appropriate, a little humor mixed in, which I like. So, and then if there are people that like it, then fantastic. And I am finding that there are more people out there, not only around the country, but around the world, that are saying, I agree. I totally love what you're saying. And so I'm not going to say it's not a risk, but I get that there are, make no mistake about it, there are people that it's like the worst is like that Billy Bush, right? That was involved with the Access Hollywood. That guy, he's just looking for something to like jump off on. He doesn't care what damage it does, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it's really outrageous. But I focus on my content. I do. Folks, I'm not trying to, as I try to explain, I'm not trying to save the world here. I'm not. But you're going to hear a number of interviews over the next couple of weeks. And I get that. See, and I'm seeing that. How is that possible? You know, I was also mentioning that foreman, the foreman who went on and said, and this is what I'm going to be critical of the foreman that went on the Today Show, where they really did everyone an injustice, was to say there was no evidence that Lexus hit him. It's one thing if you said, I don't believe the evidence that they put forward, but don't try to sell us that there wasn't anything. But maybe, you know, someone sent it to me that the Brazilian juror, the international jury, the Brazilian juror said, based on the evidence that we saw and only we saw, something akin to that. We're the only ones that saw. So maybe that's why they feel they can get away with this. They think that, oh, okay, is there secret evidence? Is there secret evidence they're looking at that we don't see? Are they unaware that it was televised? Are they unaware that it was streams everywhere? Are they unaware that, like, what are you talking about? What do you mean that only we saw, or something akin to that? Everybody saw it. But that would be interesting if they think that they're the only ones that were looking at it. That becomes like, you got to trust us because we're the only ones that really saw the events here. I don't know how it works in Brazil. That's not how it works in the United States. Maybe there's some kind of confusion there. Folks, this portion of the program, we're the only ones that had it. We saw the top secret evidence. You didn't see the top secret. There was no top secret evidence. Folks, this portion of the program, you know what could improve the value of your home? A new roof. Roofco, Rhode Island. Call them 401-868-7149. Roofco, Rhode Island. Free estimate, wind damage, leaky roof, missing lifted curled shingles, granules in the gutter. They'd be happy to inspect your roof for wind damage, give you a free estimate. It's Roofco, Rhode Island. Call them 401-868-7149. 401-868-7149. Now listen, call Joe. You can mention I sent you. Free consultation, Roofco, free estimate. It's very possible that you've had wind damage and then the insurance company picks up the whole thing. 401-868-7149 for Roofco, Rhode Island. Well, we're the only ones that could see the evidence. Not even Hank Brennan could see. During the course of the trial, you know when they would say, I'd like to admit this into evidence, and they'd say, you know, whatever the friggin' number was, and mark that evidence exhibit, whatever, 40 or 50, I don't know the number. But, well, you don't know because we were looking at secret evidence. I'm telling you, Wendy Murphy's on to something. Before you see the jury, the first question is: the world flat or round? Your answer depends on what your answer will decide if there's going to be a second question here. Folks, don't forget about Serve Pro of Providence, 401-941-5500. Serve Pro of Providence. Maybe it's fire or flood. Maybe you have water damage, mold. Serve Pro of Providence, 24/7. Call them. Maybe you have a fire and you need someone. You need someone at midnight. You need someone on a Sunday. You need some anytime, day or night. This is who I would call. Serve Pro of Providence, 401-941-5500. Maybe they're unaware. Like when they say, I find that kind of revealing. If someone says, well, we're the only ones that could see the evidence. Maybe that's how then you say the way the foreperson did. I mean, he's the one that went on today's show and said there was no evidence that she backed up and hit him. That's actually not accurate. It was a big deal when Dr. Welcher of Aperture testified that his degree of medical certainty, and they had the duplicate Lexus, that's what happened. And everything backed it up. But I wonder when and I don't know this, but when a juror, when they're saying in interviews that they decide to go on things like, well, there was no evidence, are they under the impression that we didn't see it? So therefore they feel more comfortable saying that, Take the teenager. One of the parents is awake. One of the parents hears them come in at midnight when they're supposed to be home at 11. The next morning, say to the teenager, what time did you get in last night? And the teenager says, well, what time did you go to bed? And the parent says, 10. He said, well, I got in at 10:30. Why would they say that? Because they're under the impression they didn't hear them come in at midnight. So when they say, well, only we saw we went by the evidence, so we were the only ones that had the evidence. Wrong again. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're unaware of that. The stench of the whole thing. You know what? I also want to touch on. I get that some people, how much longer is he? Don't you understand? With Sandy Hook, it couldn't be left that 25% of the American population believed that it was a hoax and no one was killed. When the truth is on trial, and the truth is, it should really be the truth versus Karen Reed. When the truth is on trial, are we all supposed to just say, oh, okay, I guess there was a conspiracy with 15 people? That's what I think some people don't understand. And by the way, all of the anger, all of the outrage, it's all because, and there's many of you out there listening or watching, it's all because you won't comply. And as the oppressor, and they are saying, the moment you just say uncle and just say, okay, the real killer's still out there, then everything's fine. That's what it is. But at what cost? As I've said, I think it's very highly dangerous that Yannetti and Jackson doing it again. The real killer of killers. They know it's a lie. She made it up. There's got to be ramifications. There have to be ramifications here. There have to be. How can there not be? That's not how a society operates. In this business, do these people not get it? We're not caving. We're not. The defense gave up on the conspiracy. You want us to agree to something that the defense didn't even, had nothing to do with the judge. Because of Brennan, they flushed it out. There are people saying, well, that's just because the judge wouldn't let them put the evidence. They didn't have the evidence. That's why they couldn't do it. Brennan just deserved credit for flushing it out. I would say to them, well, why didn't they call Colin Albert? He said, well, the judge wouldn't. No. It's because there was no evidence. Colin Albert never should have testified. That was all made up. Yesterday, when we were live, that woman, the defense expert, proved the Google thing happened. The Google search was 227. It never happened. There was no defense expert in this retrial. None. They conceded it. I know Jackson mentioned it in the closing. That's not testimony. They're allowed to do that. Maybe they shouldn't be allowed. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you. Don't forget, maybe you would like to have your sport court resurfaced. Maybe it is, in fact, a tennis court, basketball court, pickleball, epoxy garages and patios. Who am I talking about? Quality asphalt seal coating. Call Corey. Free estimate 401-283-9815. 401-283-9815. Quality asphalt seal coating. They can fix potholes. They can do line striping. Quality asphalt seal coating. They can epoxy garages, patios, decorative concrete flooring, and they can also resurface a pickleball court, tennis court, basketball court. Quality asphalt seal coating. Call Corey today. Free estimate. They're fantastic. 401-283-9815. Look for them on social media. Well, folks, again, good afternoon. We will be back at 4:30 as our coverage continues. I still think there's a lot of elements to this, and I want to touch on this. I get it. Some people, and sometimes, if something really big happened that I thought was worthy and felt I really wanted to talk about, of course, then I would jump to that. But what's going on right now? I don't think, because I know the Boston media is certainly not, but they're not really getting the gist of what's happening. And that is that Karen Reed, her defense team, her supporters, all of these people out there, they want everyone to acknowledge that the earth is flat. They're trying to run this narrative. And as I've said, I believe it's a dangerous narrative, this business that the real killers are still out there. There's a lot of nuts out there. There's a lot of wackos out there. They'll all claim, oh, I didn't know that. Look she won't even condemn the nutcase, the idiot, the complete imbecile that was dancing outside and flipping off the niece and the nephew, doing a dance. She won't even condemn that. If someone's going to do that, what's to stop someone from not only dancing in front of someone's house, but trying to get inside someone's house? I think it's a very toxic atmosphere. And I think these people are playing with fire. I do. And I mean her and her supporters. But she won't. I mean, that's a no-brainer. You know what the people are doing instead? Oh, that's someone, and they had a medical episode, and so they should be excused. And see, it's always an excuse. How about no? That's an idiot who showed terrible judgment, and her actions should be condemned. How about that? No, see, what happened was she had a medical episode, and you can't pick on her because then you're knocking someone that stop making excuses. We're not going to fall for it. But that's what's going on right now. Notice also, folks, Karen Reed, no interviews yet. How come no interview? Because she's waiting to get paid. She wants to get paid. I'm not saying it's legal. She can do that. She's being asked by all these news outlets. We'd love to interview you. She's saying, okay, here's how much I want. And now they're figuring out what the ceiling is. I don't know what the number is. And I don't know who's going to pay that. Generally, the networks don't. So it might be some form of a streaming service or something. She is saying she feels what she has to say is valuable. I would imagine it would then be an exclusive, but no one's talking about it. It's a week out. She made a brief statement, insulted the O'Keefe family, And now the negotiations go on with whoever. And maybe NBC can somehow find a way that it'll be through Peacock. So it's possible. Could be a streaming outlet that can find a way to pay for it and then, do it that way. If you're listening to the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news. If you're watching, we're going to be back at 4:30. Very special guest. In the meantime, stay cool. Stay cool on this Wednesday.